The Galactic Military Academy buzzed with nervous energy as cadets from dozens of species filled the massive amphitheater. Representatives from a mighty Zephyrian empire sat alongside the tech-savvy Altarians, while the warrior-bred Krellans flexed their forearms in anticipation. At the center of it all, looking almost comically small, sat a single human cadet named Marcus Chun. Admiral Thexvar, a towering Zephyrian with silver scales that caught the light like armor, stepped onto the platform. His voice boomed across the chamber through the translation matrix, reaching every ear, antenna, and sensory organ present. Cadets, today marks the beginning of your final evaluation. The Galactic Defense Force needs officers who can think, adapt, and survive in the harshest conditions the universe can offer. His 6 eyes swept the crowd, lingering momentarily on Marcus. Each species brings unique strengths to our alliance. The question is, which of those strengths matter most in actual combat? A Krellan cadet named Vorth raised one of his massive hands. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. Admiral, surely raw strength and warrior tradition count above all else. My people have conquered 17 star systems through pure combat prowess. Several other Krellans nodded in agreement, their battle scars gleaming under the Academy lights. They had been bred for war, standing nearly 3 meters tall with natural armor plating and reflexes that could track a bullet's path. An Altarian named Zix, 9 chirped disagreement, her crystalline form shifting colors rapidly. Respectfully, physical strength means nothing in modern warfare. Superior technology and processing speed determine victory. We Altarians can calculate 1,000,000 battle scenarios in the time it takes you to swing a weapon. The debate that followed was heated, but predictable. The Nexaries spoke of their telepathic coordination abilities. The Vorthan highlighted their natural camouflage and stealth capabilities. Each species argued why their particular gift made them the ultimate soldiers. Marcus remained silent throughout the discussion, taking notes on a simple tablet. This drew curious looks from his fellow cadets. Humans were relatively new to the Galactic Defense Force, having only made contact 7 years ago. Their homeworld of Earth was considered a backwater planet with primitive technology and laughably weak inhabitants. Admiral Thexvar raised a scaled hand for silence. Your confidence is admirable, but confidence without basis is merely arrogance. Tomorrow, we will conduct a practical exercise that will test not just your abilities, but your understanding of what warfare truly demands. The amphitheater fell silent. The Admiral's reputation was legendary, having served in the border wars against the Void Syndicate for over 3 decades. When he spoke of warfare, everyone listened. The scenario is simple, Thexvar continued. A critical research station on Outpost Meridian has been captured by hostile forces. The station contains classified defense protocols that cannot fall into enemy hands. Your mission is to infiltrate, secure, and extract both the data and any surviving personnel. He gestured, and a holographic display materialized above the crowd. The space station rotated slowly, revealing multiple levels, defensive systems, and potential entry points. The catch, the Admiral said with what might have been a smile, is that you'll be working alone. No backup, no support, just you, standard equipment, and whatever skills your species has gifted you with. The Krellan cadets looked pleased. This seemed tailor-made for their combat abilities. The Altarians began immediately calculating optimal approach vectors and system vulnerabilities. Other species murmured among themselves, already forming strategies. Marcus continued taking notes, occasionally glancing at the hologram, but showing no particular emotion. A Zephyrian cadet named Kelrix, sitting nearby, leaned over with curiosity. Human Marcus, Kelrix whispered, his translator making his sibilant voice sound almost musical. Your species is known for persistence, yes? Is it your plan? To simply outlast the defenders. Marcus looked up from his tablet and smiled. It was a quiet smile, neither boastful nor uncertain. Something like that. he said simply. The answer puzzled Kelrix. Humans were known to be tenacious, certainly, but that hardly seemed like a combat advantage. They were physically weak compared to most species, their technology was generations behind galactic standard, and they had no special abilities like telepathy or natural armor. After the briefing, cadets dispersed to prepare for the simulation. Marcus made his way to the equipment bay, where each participant could select from standard galactic military gear. The Krellans chose heavy assault weapons and enhanced armor. The Altarians picked sophisticated scanning devices and drone controllers. The stealthier species selected advanced camouflage systems. Marcus walked past all of these, gathering what seemed like basic supplies. A standard rifle, basic armor, medical kit, some food rations, and, oddly, a significant amount of wire, plastic sheeting, and what appeared to be common household chemicals. Interesting choices, human. The voice belonged to Commander Elise, a veteran instructor from the aquatic delphine species. Her tentacled form rippled with curiosity. Most cadets focus on weapons and defensive systems. Every tool has a purpose, Marcus replied, checking the weight distribution of his pack. Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't expect. The next morning, cadets gathered in the simulation chamber. Advanced holographic technology could create completely realistic environments, complete with functional physics and genuine consequences. Injuries sustained in simulation felt real. Those safety protocols prevented actual death. One by one, cadets entered their individual simulation pods. Each would face the same scenario, but in complete isolation, their performance monitored and recorded for later analysis. Vortha Krellin went first. His approach was exactly what everyone expected, a frontal assault. His massive frame absorbed incredible amounts of damage as he smashed through defensive barriers, overwhelming guards through sheer physical dominance. He successfully extracted the data, and 2 survivors, though his injuries would have been fatal in reality. Zix, 9, demonstrated Altarian technological superiority by hacking the station's systems, turning defensive turrets against the guards, and manipulating environmental controls to clear her path. Her approach was clean and efficient, though it took considerable time to break through the more sophisticated security protocols. Several other cadets followed, each showcasing their species' particular strengths. The results varied, but most managed to complete the primary objectives with varying degrees of success and casualty rates. Then, it was Marcus's turn. The observation deck filled with instructors and cadets who had completed their runs. There was considerable curiosity about how the human would handle the scenario. Earth's military reputation was virtually non-existent, and humans were generally considered too weak for serious combat roles. The simulation began. Marcus materialized at the edge of the asteroid field surrounding Outpost Meridian. Instead of immediately heading for the station, he spent nearly an hour observing. Using basic sensors, he mapped patrol patterns, identified guard positions, and analyzed the station's power grid and life support systems. "What is he doing?" Kelrix asked, his scales rippling with confusion. "Every minute he waits gives the enemy more time to strengthen their defenses." Commander Elise watched with growing interest. "Patience, cadet. Watch and learn." Marcus began moving, but not toward the station's obvious entry points. Instead, he maneuvered to a section of the asteroid field that seemed to offer no tactical advantage whatsoever. There, he began assembling something from his seemingly random collection of supplies. The wire, plastic sheeting, and household chemicals came together to form what appeared to be a crude but functional electromagnetic pulse device. The construction was improvised but showed clear understanding of both the underlying physics and the station's vulnerabilities. "Impossible," whispered an Altarian instructor. "Those materials shouldn't be capable of generating sufficient electromagnetic force to affect military-grade systems." Human engineering, Commander Elise observed. "They have a remarkable talent for making effective tools from inadequate materials." Marcus attached his device to a small asteroid and used basic thrusters to send it on a collision course with the station. The electromagnetic pulse activated just before impact, creating a localized systems failure that disabled sensors and communications in a specific section of the station. In the chaos that followed, Marcus used standard thruster pack to reach the compromised section. The guards were dealing with multiple system failures and had no idea that their difficulties were caused by an external attack rather than equipment malfunction. What happened next impressed even the most skeptical observers. Marcus didn't fight his way through the station like a Krellin or hack systems like an Altarian. Instead, he seemed to understand something fundamental about the nature of the enemy that none of the other cadets had grasped. He began leaving false trails, creating the impression that multiple infiltrators were moving through different sections of the station simultaneously. Using simple materials from his pack, he constructed decoy signals and planted false evidence of a much larger assault force. The enemy response was exactly what he had predicted. Guards began abandoning their posts to respond to threats that didn't exist, leaving critical areas vulnerable. Marcus moved through the chaos like a ghost, avoiding confrontation entirely while the defenders chased shadows. Admiral Thexvar leaned forward in his observation chair, his 6 eyes focused intently on the display. "Remarkable," he murmured. "The human understands that the enemy's greatest weakness is not their weapons or armor, but their assumptions." Marcus reached the data core without firing a single shot. While extracting the classified information, he also accessed the station's internal communications, learning the locations of capture personnel and the enemy's planned response to various rescue scenarios. Instead of immediately attempting to reach the prisoners, Marcus spent additional time in the data core, using his improvised tools to plant what appeared to be a sophisticated virus in the station's computer network. In reality, it was a relatively simple program designed to create the appearance of cascading system failures throughout the facility. The enemy commanders, faced with what seemed like total systems collapse, made the decision Marcus had been counting on. They ordered a general evacuation, planning to abandon the station rather than risk losing their entire force to what appeared to be a catastrophic technical failure. As guards began withdrawing from their positions, Marcus moved swiftly to collect the surviving personnel. His understanding of human psychology proved remarkably applicable to other species as well. Rather than simply ordering the survivors to follow him, he explained his plan clearly and gave them specific roles in their own rescue. "You're not just passengers," he told them quietly as alarms blared throughout the station. "You know this facility better than I do. Help me help you." The survivors, energized by being treated as partners rather than helpless victims, provided crucial information about hidden passages and emergency protocols that weren't in the standard schematics. Together, they navigated toward the extraction point as the station continued its apparent descent into technological chaos. The final stroke was perhaps the most impressive. Instead of simply escaping with his rescued personnel, Marcus used his remaining improvised devices to create what appeared to be a massive explosion in the station's power core. In reality, it was mostly light and electromagnetic interference, but the effect convinced the evacuating enemy forces that the entire facility was lost. They fled the system entirely, believing that some unknown force had not only rescued the prisoners and stolen the data, but had also destroyed the strategic outpost entirely. They would report back to their commanders that Outpost Meridian was no longer a viable target, ensuring it wouldn't face another attack anytime soon. Marcus and the survivors reached the extraction point safely, having completed not just their stated objectives, but having neutralized the threat to the station entirely. Total casualties, 0. Time elapsed, roughly half that of the fastest previous attempt. The observation deck was completely silent as the simulation ended, and Marcus emerged from his pod. The human looked tired, but satisfied, checking his equipment methodically before turning to face the assembled crowd of instructors and fellow cadets. Admiral Thexvar stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. For a long moment, He simply stared at the unassuming human who had just redefined everyone's understanding of military effectiveness. "Cadet Chun," the Admiral said finally, his voice carrying a note that none of the observers had heard before. "Report to my office immediately. We need to talk." Admiral Thexvar's office was a monument to military history. Battle flags from a dozen campaigns hung alongside weapons from species across the galaxy. Behind his massive desk, a viewport showed the training grounds where the next generation of galactic defenders honed their skills. Marcus stood at attention, his posture correct but relaxed. The Admiral studied him for several minutes, occasionally making notes on a tablet that seemed tiny in his scaled hands. "At ease, Cadet Chun," Thexvar finally said. "I have been reviewing your simulation performance, and I must admit it has raised several questions that I was not expecting to ask today." The Admiral activated a holographic display showing Marcus's mission from multiple angles. The improvised electromagnetic pulse device rotated slowly in the air between them. "This device," Thexvar pointed with one clawed finger, "according to our engineers, should not have worked. The materials you used are not designed for electromagnetic manipulation. Yet somehow, you created a functional EMP weapon using kitchen chemicals and basic wire." Marcus nodded. "Human engineering often involves using things for purposes they weren't originally designed for, sir. We call it making do or jury-rigging. When you don't have the best tools, you learn to make the available tools work better." "I see." The Admiral made another note. "And this psychological manipulation of the enemy forces. You convinced them to abandon a strategic position by making them believe their own systems were failing. This suggests a deep understanding of decision-making processes under stress." "Fear is universal, Admiral," Marcus replied. "When people think they're losing control, they often make choices that seem logical at the time, but are actually based on emotion rather than fact. I just gave them a reason to be afraid of the wrong thing." Thexvar's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among his species. "Cadet Chun, I'm going to ask you a question that may seem unusual. In your opinion, what is the most important factor in military success?" Marcus considered carefully. Around the office, holographic displays showed ongoing conflicts across the galaxy. Massive fleets engaged in epic battles, ground forces clashing on alien worlds, technological marvels being deployed against seemingly impossible odds. "Adaptability, sir," Marcus said finally. "The ability to change your approach when circumstances change. Most conflicts are lost not because one side is weaker, but because they couldn't adjust to new situations fast enough." The Admiral leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his considerable weight. "Interesting. Most cadets say firepower or superior technology or numerical advantage. You focus on flexibility. Those other things matter," Marcus agreed, "but only if you can use them effectively. History is full of examples where this superior force lost because they couldn't adapt to unexpected tactics or changing conditions." Before Thexvar could respond, his communications system chimed. The face of General Corvin, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Defense Force, appeared in the air above his desk. The general was a Nexari, his purple skin marked with the neural interface ports that allowed his species to link directly with computer systems. "Admiral," General Corvin said without preamble, "we have a situation. The hegemony has made an unexpected move." The hegemony was the GDF's primary opponent, a collection of species that believed in conquest through overwhelming force. They had been relatively quiet for the past few months, leading to hopes that diplomatic solutions might be possible. "Details, General?" Thexvar asked, gesturing for Marcus to remain at attention. 3 hours ago, hegemony forces captured Station Olympus in the Tau sector. The station houses our primary research facility for defensive technologies, including the new shield generation systems that could revolutionize fleet protection. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He was familiar with Station Olympus from his strategic studies courses. It was considered one of the most heavily defended positions in GDF space, surrounded by automated defense platforms and protected by a permanent fleet presence. How is that possible? Admiral Thexvar demanded. Olympus has defenses that should withstand a full battle group assault. General Corvin's expression was grim. They used a new tactic. Instead of a frontal assault, they sent in what appeared to be a diplomatic ship requesting emergency assistance. When our forces lowered shields to provide aid, the diplomatic vessel released dozens of boarding pods directly into the station's docking bays. Deception, Marcus said quietly, then immediately regretted speaking without permission. Both senior officers looked at him. General Corvin's neural ports glowed briefly as he accessed Marcus's academy records in real time. Cadet Chun, the general said slowly, I am reading your simulation results from this morning. Most impressive. Admiral Thexvar, is this the human who completed the Outpost Meridian scenario? Yes, General. He achieved perfect mission success with 0 casualties in record time. The general's ports glowed brighter as he processed additional information. Cadet Chun, based on your recent performance and your comment just now, I am curious about your assessment of the Olympus situation. Marcus looked to Admiral Thexvar, who nodded permission to speak freely. Sir, if the hegemony used deception to capture Olympus, they're probably planning to use deception to keep it as well. They'll know we have to try to retake the station because of the research data, so they'll be prepared for a standard assault. But they might not be prepared for something unexpected. What kind of unexpected action? General Corvin asked. Marcus hesitated, then decided to speak his mind completely. Sir, the hegemony thinks in terms of overwhelming force and direct confrontation. They captured Olympus by pretending to be something they weren't. The question is, what would they never expect us to pretend to be? The two senior officers exchanged looks. In the silence that followed, Marcus could hear the distant sounds of training exercises from the academy grounds below. General, Admiral Thexvar said slowly, I believe we should discuss this further, but not over an open channel. Agreed. I am dispatching a priority transport to the academy. Both of you will report to headquarters within 6 hours. General Corvin paused, his ports flickering. Cadet Chun, bring your gear. All of it. The transmission ended, leaving the office in silence. Admiral Thexvar stood and moved to the viewport, staring out at the training grounds where other cadets continued their exercises, unaware that a major crisis was developing. Sir, Marcus said carefully, am I in trouble? The Admiral turned back to him, and for the first time since Marcus had known him, Thexvar's expression seemed almost amused. Cadet Chun, in my 40 years of military service, I have learned that when senior command wants to see a junior officer immediately and tells them to bring all their gear, it means one of two things. Either you have done something so wrong that you are about to be court-martialed, or you have done something so right that you are about to be given responsibilities far beyond your current rank. Which do you think this is, sir? Given your performance this morning and the timing of the Olympus crisis, I suspect you are about to have a very interesting day. 2 hours later, Marcus found himself aboard a military transport speeding toward GDF headquarters. Admiral Thexvar sat across from him, reviewing classified reports about the Olympus situation on a secure tablet. The more the Admiral read, the more concerned his expression became. Cadet, he said without looking up, I want you to understand something. What we are flying toward is not an academic exercise. The research data on Station Olympus includes defensive technologies that could shift the balance of power in this entire sector. If the hegemony successfully extracts and analyzes that information, they will gain military advantages that could cost millions of lives. Marcus nodded soberly. I understand, sir. I also want you to understand that your academy standing is about to become largely irrelevant. If General Corvin is thinking what I believe he is thinking, you may find yourself involved in actual military operations much sooner than anyone anticipated. The transport shuddered slightly as it dropped out of hyperspace near the massive orbital complex that served as GDF headquarters. Through the viewports, Marcus could see the bustling activity of a military organization in crisis mode. Ships were launching continuously, Supply convoys were moving in formation, and communication arrays were operating at maximum capacity. "Sir," Marcus said as they prepared to dock, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why do you think General Corvin specifically wants me there?" "I'm just a cadet. There are thousands of experienced officers who know more about strategy and tactics than I do." Admiral Thexvar finished securing his tablet and looked directly at Marcus with all 6 eyes. "Cadet Shun, in your simulation this morning, you did something that our best tactical minds have struggled with for decades. You took a situation that seemed to require superior firepower or advanced technology, and you solved it using intelligence, creativity, and understanding of your enemy's psychology." The transport settled into its docking bay with a soft thump. The hegemony has just proven that they can outthink our traditional approaches. They captured one of our most secure installations not through superior force, but through superior deception. To counter that, we need officers who can think in ways that our enemies do not expect. They gathered their gear and prepared to disembark. Around them, the transport's crew moved with the efficient urgency of people who knew that lives depended on their speed and accuracy. "Sir," Marcus said as they stepped into the docking bay, "what if I'm wrong? What if my ideas don't work against real enemies in a real situation?" Admiral Thexvar paused in the busy corridor, forcing other personnel to move around them. His scaled face was serious, but not unkind. "Cadet Shun, this morning you proved that human thinking can solve problems in ways that the rest of us cannot predict or duplicate. In less than an hour, General Corvin and his staff will present you with one of the most challenging tactical situations we have faced in years." They resumed walking toward the command center, their footsteps echoing in corridors filled with officers from dozens of species, all working toward the same goal of protecting galactic civilization. "If you are wrong," the Admiral continued, "we will try something else. But if you are right, you may help us save not just Station Olympus and its research data, but potentially thousands of lives that would be lost in a prolonged conflict." They reached the entrance to the command center, where 2 guards checked their identification carefully before allowing them to proceed. "No pressure, right, sir?" Marcus said with a slight smile. Admiral Thexvar's scaled features shifted in what might have been his own version of a smile. "Cadet Shun, if you were the type of person who was easily intimidated by pressure, you would not have solved this morning's simulation the way you did." The doors to the command center slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with holographic displays, tactical stations, and some of the highest-ranking military officers in the galaxy. At the center of it all stood General Corvin, his neural ports glowing as he interfaced directly with the command systems. He looked up as they entered, and Marcus felt the weight of dozens of alien gazes focusing on him. In the central display, Station Olympus rotated slowly, red indicators showing hegemony ships in defensive positions around the captured facility. "Admiral Thexvar, Cadet Shun," General Corvin said formally, "welcome to what may be one of the most critical strategic discussions in recent GDF history." Marcus straightened his shoulders and prepared to find out exactly what the galaxy's military leadership expected from one human cadet who had impressed them by thinking differently about an impossible problem. The command center hummed with activity as General Corvin gestured for Marcus and Admiral Thexvar to approach the central holographic display. Station Olympus hung in the projection like a metallic flower, its multiple research modules extending from a central hub. Red markers indicated enemy positions, while friendly forces were shown in blue, maintaining a cautious distance. "Cadet Shun," General Corvin said, his neural ports pulsing as he accessed real-time intelligence data. "Before we discuss our options, I want you to understand exactly what we are facing." The display zoomed in, showing details of the hegemony fleet surrounding the station. Marcus counted at least 30 vessels of various sizes, from massive battlecruisers down to fast attack craft. Their positioning was textbook defensive doctrine, creating overlapping fields of fire that would devastate any approaching force. The hegemony has had 6 hours to fortify their position, General Corvin continued. They have installed additional weapon platforms, deployed fighter screens, and, according to our intelligence, they're working around the clock to extract the research data. A new figure approached the display. Commander Sarah Way, a human officer with the cybernetic implants that marked her as a member of GDF intelligence, nodded to Marcus in recognition. Cadet Chun, she said in accented English, I have reviewed your academy file and your simulation performance. General Corvin asked me to brief you on what makes this situation particularly challenging. The display shifted to show the interior of Station Olympus. Marcus could see life signs indicating that most of the research staff was still alive, concentrated in what appeared to be a secure section of the main laboratory module. The hegemony has approximately 200 prisoners, including some of our most brilliant scientists, Commander Way explained. They're using them as both hostages and forced labor to help extract the research data. Any rescue attempt must account for their safety. Additionally, General Corvin added, the research data itself is protected by quantum encryption systems that will automatically destroy all information if the station suffers catastrophic damage. A direct assault would likely result in the loss of everything we're trying to protect. Marcus studied the display carefully, noting the positions of both enemy forces and the location of the prisoners. The tactical situation seemed designed to prevent exactly the kind of creative solutions he had used in the simulation. Sir, Marcus said slowly, may I ask what our conventional options look like? A Krellin general named Thok stepped forward, his scarred face grim. We have assembled a strike force of 80 ships, including our newest heavy cruisers. A frontal assault could break through their defenses, but casualties would be severe and the research data would almost certainly be destroyed. Alternatively, added a Nexary admiral, her purple skin shimmering as she interfaced with the tactical computers, we could attempt a siege, trying to starve them out. But our intelligence suggests they have sufficient supplies for several months, and time favors the hegemony as they work to extract our secrets. What about a stealth approach? Marcus asked. Attempted and failed, Commander Way replied. The hegemony has deployed sensor grids that make traditional stealth infiltration impossible. They learned that lesson from previous encounters with our special forces. General Corvin's neural ports flashed brighter as he processed additional information. Cadet Chun, the reason you are here is that every conventional approach we have considered ends in either military disaster or mission failure. We need an unconventional solution. Marcus walked closer to the holographic display, circling around it slowly as he studied the enemy positions from different angles. The other officers watched silently, waiting to see what insights human perspective might provide. Sir, Marcus said finally, can I ask what the hegemony knows about human capabilities? The question seemed to surprise several of the assembled officers. General Corvin's ports flickered as he accessed relevant intelligence files. Limited information, he said. They know humans are new to the galactic community and are considered physically weak compared to most species. Our intelligence suggests they view human involvement in GDF operations as largely symbolic. What about human psychology and tactics? Even less understanding. The hegemony focuses primarily on technological and physical capabilities when assessing threats. They have extensive data on Krellin warrior culture, Nexary technological integration, and Altarian computational abilities, but humans are considered too recent and too primitive to warrant detailed study. Marcus nodded, a plan beginning to form in his mind. General, what would the hegemony expect if they discovered that a human was leading a rescue operation? Commander Way stepped closer, her cybernetic implants glowing as she processed the implications of the question. They would likely assume it was either a desperate move by GDF command or a training exercise designed to test human capabilities without risking experienced officers. In either case, Admiral Thexvar added, understanding dawning in his voice, they would not consider a human-led operation to represent a serious threat. Marcus turned to face General Corvin directly. Sir, what if we gave them exactly what they expect to see? A small, apparently inadequate human-led mission that seems designed to fail. The command center fell silent except for the constant hum of electronics and the distant sounds of ships moving through the docking bays. Every officer present was processing the implications of what Marcus was suggesting. "Continue," General Corvin said simply. Marcus gestured to the holographic display. "The hegemony expects overwhelming force or sophisticated technology, because that's how they think. They captured Olympus through deception, but now they're defending it using traditional methods. They have sensor grids to detect stealth ships, weapons to destroy attacking fleets, and protocols to handle siege situations." He paused, organizing his thoughts. But what if the rescue force wasn't trying to be stealthy and wasn't powerful enough to be threatening? What if it was just obvious enough and weak enough that the hegemony would dismiss it as a meaningless gesture? General Thok leaned forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the display. "You are suggesting a deliberately inadequate rescue force." "I'm suggesting a rescue force that appears inadequate," Marcus corrected. "One human officer, maybe a small support crew, in a ship that looks like a training vessel or diplomatic courier. Something that would make the hegemony think. The GDF must be really desperate if they're sending humans to attempt what their best forces cannot accomplish." Commander Wei's implants flickered rapidly as she ran tactical simulations. "It could work," she said slowly. "The hegemony has a documented pattern of overconfidence when facing opponents they consider inferior." "But what would such a mission actually accomplish?" asked the Nexary Admiral. "A small ship could not break through their defenses or evacuate significant numbers of prisoners." Marcus smiled, the same quiet expression he had worn during his academy briefing. "It wouldn't need to break through their defenses. It would need to convince them to lower their defenses themselves." He gestured to the display again, highlighting the hegemony's defensive positions. "They're defending against attacks from outside the station. What if the threat came from inside?" "The prisoners are under heavy guard," General Thok pointed out. "They cannot mount an effective resistance without weapons and coordination." "They don't need to mount a resistance," Marcus replied. "They need to create a crisis that the hegemony feels they can handle easily, while actually serving as a distraction for the real operation." General Corvin's ports blazed as he processed the tactical implications at superhuman speed. "You are proposing a multiple-layer deception. The hegemony dismisses the human rescue attempt as ineffective, while the humans create an internal crisis that appears manageable but actually compromises the hegemony's defensive posture." "Exactly, sir. And while they're dealing with what they think is a minor internal problem and a failed external rescue, the actual extraction happens through methods they're not prepared for." Admiral Thexvar stepped closer to the display. "What methods are you considering, Cadet Chun?" Marcus pointed to a section of the station that appeared unremarkable in the current tactical overlay. "The research data isn't just stored in computer systems, sir. Scientists work with physical equipment, test samples, prototype devices. If the extraction team can reach the laboratories, they might be able to communicate directly with the research staff and coordinated data transfer that bypasses the quantum encryption entirely." "You want to extract the people and the data simultaneously," Commander Wei said, her understanding growing. "Use the prisoner's knowledge to access information that cannot be electronically retrieved. And do it while the hegemony is focused on the wrong threats in the wrong locations," Marcus added. The command center erupted in discussion as officers began analyzing the feasibility of such an operation. Holographic displays shifted and changed as tactical computers modeled various scenarios. The complexity was enormous, requiring precise timing and coordination across multiple simultaneous deceptions. General Corvin raised a hand for silence. When the room quieted, he looked directly at Marcus with an expression that seemed to combine respect with concern. "Cadet Chun, you have outlined a plan that could potentially succeed where conventional approaches would fail. However, executing such a plan would require an officer capable of adapting to rapidly changing circumstances, maintaining multiple deceptions simultaneously, and coordinating with both prisoners and extraction teams while under extreme pressure. He paused, his neural ports pulsing steadily. In your opinion, who should lead such a mission? Marcus felt every eye in the room focusing on him. The weight of expectation was overwhelming, but he remembered Admiral Thexvar's words about pressure and performance. Sir, he said carefully, the mission would require someone the hegemony would underestimate, someone familiar with human psychology and improvisation techniques, and someone expendable enough that the GDF could deny their existence if the operation failed. In other words, General Corvin said slowly, a human cadet with no official standing who could be disavowed if necessary. Yes, sir. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the tension in the room as the assembled officers considered the implications of sending a student into one of the most dangerous missions in recent GDF history. Finally, General Corvin nodded once. Very well, Cadet Shun. You have 4 hours to prepare. Commander Wei will provide you with intelligence support and specialized equipment. Admiral Thexvar will coordinate the external elements of the operation. He gestured to the holographic display, which now showed a timeline counting down toward the